Spoiler alert, you like money, so we're going to help you make some right now on The Sweat. Prices are all over the map in the world of baseball, so our experts are going to help you build a winning Wednesday lineup.
And with the NFL season just 15 days away, we're going to talk to you about which young running backs aim to avoid a sophomore slump.
Plus,
Kamara, McCaffrey, and Cook. Let's see who's the best running back of those sophomores.
You kind of just snuck up on us there, buddy.
I'm very sneaky.
Yeah, we can tell. Let's start the show.
alrighty, it is Wednesday, my dude, so legally you can't be fired no matter what or who you hump. Thanks for watching The Sweat. She's a former captain of the Boston College women's lacrosse team, Jessie Coffield. I'm former intramural floor hockey champion at UCF, Emerson Lotzia.
All facts minus that humping thing. So, yeah, we'll work on that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Batting leadoff tonight are the boys of baseball, Gary and Thorne, Steve Buchanan, and Julian Edlow. Chase or fade time. So agree or disagree with the following statements and why.
Steve, coming off a great outing against Pittsburgh, John Lester is a smart play at Detroit for $8,200.
Yeah, you know, fun fact, I was actually on the top dodgeball team in America a few years ago, so how about that one? Huh? You like that?
Wow.
Yeah, you can dodge your wrench, buddy. I believe it. I've seen you. You're very agile.
Let me tell you, that didn't help me with the ladies, though. They didn't really care about that. Anyways, John Lester, good play versus Detroit tonight. He's been a little too shaky for my liking as of late. I mean, sure, he's facing the Tigers, and that's certainly going to entice some people, but I mean, look at his numbers lately. He's averaging just under 10 DK fantasy points in his last 5 starts since the All-Star break, a 447 WOBA with a 6.65 FIP. I mean, this guy has just been not getting it done lately, and that's why his salary is as low as it is. Now he travels to an American League ballpark. They got that DH in there, so he loses facing the pitcher spot. Granted, the Tigers don't have a ton of bats that you fear, but that's an automatic out that he no longer has here in the American League ballpark. So I don't really feel like this is a great spot to pay for Lester. There's a few guys that we'll talk about later in the highest rated segment on this show that I like a lot better. So Lester is definitely a no-go for me.
What about you, Garen? Would you be willing to spend 8.2 on this guy? Had north of 30 DK fantasy points against Pittsburgh last week.
No, I think Steve hit on a lot of the important points here. The big one being, even with that amazing start, his past 6, 447 WOBA to opposing batters, a 612 slugging percentage specifically to right-handed bats in that span of time. And it's a very right-handed heavy lineup he's going to face in Detroit tonight. Now, we can talk about the quality of those right-handed bats all we want, but at the same time, Detroit, for about a span of 45 days, was by far the worst offense in all of baseball. They've kind of leveled out of that nosedive. They've been league average across the last 2 weeks, striking out in under 20% of their plate appearances in that span of time. I just look at the tier and price point Lester's at tonight, and I think I'd rather have Lance Lynn. I'd rather have John Gray, who are actually cheaper than John Lester at $8,200. So I also think I'd rather have the freedom to still use Nico Goodrum at second base or in the outfield, even Nick Castellanos. I think I'm more enticed by these value Detroit bats than I am using John Lester, considering he's still over $8,000.
Julian, would you consider playing John Lester tonight? He's not very good in his career against Detroit. 2-6 in 11 starts, and ERA 6.05. Jason or Faden, though, that he's a good start, a smart play tonight?
Yeah, I got to fade this one with the rest of the guys, and I don't care about that one outlier start against the Pirates. Sure, he had a good game. These guys threw a bunch of fancy numbers at you. I'll just talk about the pure DraftKings points in his most recent games. Prior to that 30-point outburst, he had negative points on DraftKings in 3 out of his last 5 starts and failed to reach 4 DraftKings points in 4 of those last 5 starts. That is not good. If you are paying $8,200 for 4 points or a guy that can get you negative points, I have zero interest in that. Yes, it's the Tigers lineup. They're not that great. Maybe he did break out of a slump. I'm still not willing to pay $8,200 to find out if he is back to the John Lester that we used to know. And as Garion kind of hinted at, I would rather roster a couple of Tigers bats on this slate than roster John Lester if I had to pick between the two.
sweatometer starting to go off
Yeah,
a little bit on that one.
It's not every day that Julian gets the sweatometer moving, but when he does, he's talking John Lester.
All right, guys.
I'll remember that, Emerson.
Yeah, don't forget it. Let's talk bats now, though. Jose Ramirez is the only 6K hitter on the slate, and that's just too high for him. Are you chasing or fading this one, Garion?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily too high for him. Jose Ramirez has definitely earned being a $6,000 bat every single night. The problem is, when you look at this 10-game slate, I'm not comfortable going below $7,000 at pitcher. I don't even know if I'm comfortable going below $7,800 at pitcher, so I just don't have any lineups where I'm going to be able to afford Jose Ramirez tonight. Like, he does check a couple boxes. The ownership is going to be low. If you're going to be hitting at Fenway Park, you'd rather him be right-handed than left-handed. And the left-handed Brian Johnson definitely accomplishes that feat for a couple plate appearances. Also, Johnson himself, 2.41 home runs per 9 to the opposition so far in August. So this is not about the scenario he's in. This is about the scenario of the night as a whole. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to afford Jose Ramirez.
Steve, do you agree? Are you going to budget in Ramirez at 6K, or do you feel like you need to spend that money on a pitcher?
I mean, look, nobody looks at a hitter at 6K and they go, oh, awesome, I was really hoping he was 6,000 tonight. I'm definitely going to get him in my lineup. I mean, 6,000 is high for anybody. I don't care who you are. I mean, legitimately, he needs 18 DK fantasy points to really pay off for what you're paying for. And then I look at what Ramirez has done against lefties on the road. It's not as good as you'd expect. 285 WOBA with a 194 isolated power. Not numbers you'd expect for somebody that's going to cost you $6,000 tonight. Overall, though, I will say I do like this spot for the Indians against Brian Johnson. Gary mentioned the home runs have been an issue for him, and this is a team that can absolutely park them, especially at Fenway Park. So if you're doing an Indian stack, it's a scary thought to think that you would fade Ramirez because of his price. I feel like if you're into stacking the Indians, you're almost forced to get Ramirez in there because it's not somebody you want to leave on the board.
Wow, sweatometer absolutely going off for that one. Basically, Ramirez not as good as you think he is. Julian, do you agree or disagree with Steven? Are you chasing or fading this?
Yeah, well, I hate to disappoint Emerson here. I don't know if this is really going to move the sweatometer, but Garion took the words right out of my mouth there. You got to fade that 6,000 is too much for him. The guy's got 37 home runs. He's going against a bad pitcher in Fenway Park. It's an impossible play to hate, but I will chase that you certainly don't need to pay up for him at $6,000. Just look at the third base position. We've got Nolan Arenado at 5,400 going against a terrible pitcher at Coors Field. Eduardo Escobar going against a terrible pitcher at home for Arizona at 4,900. Matt Carpenter's salary's dropped all the way to 4,800. There's a lot of places that you can spend your money at third base, and with a lot of people probably paying for that mid-priced pitching, you can't necessarily afford $6,000 at third base.
All right, well, Julian, the stack Edlow. It's a stack the Rockies at Coors Field kind of night against Padres' 22-year-old righty Jacob Nix. You chasing or fading? I know what you're going to do here because I saw your little write-up on the DK playbook, buddy.
Everybody knows what I'm going to do here because they all read my article, and the Rockies were the top stack this morning. You got to chase this. Hopefully you can afford it, but like I said, if people are paying, $7,800 and pitchers in the 8,000 range, you probably can make something fit. Now, look, are you going to be able to stack 4 to 5 bats here? No, they're going to be too expensive, but you can definitely squeeze a few in. Whoever this Jacob Nix guy for the Padres is, he stinks. He could not get out of the first inning the last time he pitched without allowing 5 runs to the Diamondbacks, and that was at Petco Park. How the hell is this guy going to survive at Coors Field? Arenado's salary dropped a little bit for us. It's at 5,400. Blackman's at 5,400. DJ LeMahieu has a nice little stretch of double-digit points on DK. He's 4,800. There are ways to fit a few of these bats in your lineups for sure.
And Steve, as you wrote up on the playbook, this game sports the highest projected run total on the evening, and the majority of those runs are projected to come from the Rockies. Any chance you're fading this?
Look, someone has to tell Julian just because they're playing in Coors Field doesn't mean they're going to score 10 runs every single time. It's okay, Julian. They don't have to be number one every single time. Look at this kid, Nix. Stop it. Look at Nix. We don't really know what's going to be of this kid yet. I mean, he's had 2 starts. First, he does 22 DK fantasy points against the Phillies. Then the next start, negative 11.3 against the Diamondbacks. What the hell, man? I mean, give us something here. It's hard to figure out where this kid is at. but the Rockies do own a massive 6.5 run total tonight, but righties has not been their strongest point this season. At home, 331 WOBA with a 182 ISO against righties at Coors Field. Those are good numbers for sure, but they don't absolutely blow you away. Like Julian did say, I'll give him some credit. You can take a couple bats here, but I think a full stack, I don't think it's necessary.
Gary, and what are you doing here? Because I believe I saw a number of Rockies players in your top MLB targets, which, hey, you better get your answer in quick before the studio melts down after Steve's take.
I only actually had one, and that's kind of the point here. I had Charlie Blackmon, and really, when you, again, look at the pricing of the night, like, I've got a lot of Carlos Carrasco, Noah Syndergaard-led lineups paired with John Gray or Lance Lynn, and that leaves you around $4,200 to spend on each position once you get through pitching. So if you can get Charlie Blackmon, who I think is in a great spot here tonight, considering Nix is essentially just a fastball curveball pitcher, and Charlie Blackmon demolishes curveballs the last 2 seasons, a slugging percentage up over 700 against right-handed pitchers who throw the curveball. I mean, that's great, but aside from that, it's going to be like, what, Gerardo Parra at 4-1? Maybe you get DJ LeMahieu in there, but all the Rockies you want to own are priced above $5,300, and I just don't think this is a night where you're going to get more than one $5,000 bat into your lineup. And, hey, even the Diamondbacks, like Adrizamir Despaigne should not be starting a game in 2018. If we're going for stacks, why not the Diamondbacks, who are all priced in the upper 4,000s, not the mid 5,000s?
Well, Julian, huh? No.
Well, I mean, you look at that Diamondback stack. You got your guy, Paul Goldschmidt. He's up there at 5,500. Aren't there more bats up there? I'm scrolling over to the lineup.
We got Descalza at 4.6. We've got
David Peralta 5.5. Paul Goldschmidt 5.5. We're talking apples to apples here.
We got Descalzo at 4.6. We've got Eduardo Escobar at 4.9. We're getting under $5,000 here.
For 4.6. I want DJ LeMahieu for 4.8.
Steve can't even.
But I am impressed you got that pitcher's name right on the Angels. I have no idea how to say it.
We have a long entangled history, believe me.
And guys, John Jay for $4,100. I mean, we're going to sit here and name off all these guys in the Diamondbacks.
No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Okay, yeah, we don't want to waste Steve's time.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to see you guys back here in about 15 minutes for some of Steve's top plays of the night, okay? But for now, here's Brendan Glasheen with an update on the Saints running back situation, minus the suspended Mark Ingram.
The early season running back plan in the Big Easy might not be as hard to sort out as we thought. Per ESPN's Mike Triplett, Jonathan Williams has emerged as the leading candidate to pair with Alvin Kamara in the Saints' backfield during Mark Ingram's 4-game suspension. A 2016 Bills 5th-round pick, Williams has an edge with New Orleans releasing Terrence West Tuesday, and rookie Boston Scott still has work to put in. While his preseason stats look good, 12 rush, 63 yards, and a touchdown, keep in mind Williams was cut by the Bills despite a solid 2017 preseason. The Saints stuck him on their practice squad last November. He's been there since. Just take the numbers and the preseason stats out of it for a second. Per Triplett's article, this is striking. Head coach Sean Payton credited Williams for his quality work during goal line runs in both the preseason opener and practice. Fantasy users, usage and goal line sets. We love hearing this. The Saints are missing a guy to pound it into the end zone with Mark Ingram out. Williams, $4K for week 1 against the Bucs. Should the salary remain cheap, and of course if he makes the team, he might be worth rostering as a touchdown wild card flex option the weeks Ingram is absent.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are a mere 15 days away from kicking off the NFL season. Here to help us get our rosters right, that would be Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. All right, Jeff, looking good in blue, baby. We all are today.
Oh, yeah, I got the memo today.
Yeah, you did.
So awkward for
It's
you,
always
Reed.
the wardrobe.
Yeah, it's always. All right, guys, we're going to play NFL over under second year backs edition. So will these sophomore RBs go over or under these stat lines in 2018? First up, Saints running back Alvin Kamara, over or under 250 touches. Jeff, what do you think?
This is going to be an unpopular opinion. I'm actually going to go under here. And I know people are all set up. You know, they got their plates ready to dive into the Alvin Kamara dish this year. But Sean Payton has a history of using multiple running backs, and even with Mark Ingram out, I feel like Jonathan Williams has been playing well enough in camp. He's going to take some of those touches early in the season. Alvin Kamara is going to get 80 receptions again, or in that range. I don't have any doubt, but he needs to get 50 more carries based on what he did last year. He's not really a main carry running back. It's just, maybe that's just my opinion. Maybe it's an unpopular one, but I don't think he sets up like that. I don't think Sean Payton views him like that. And I don't think he's going to get used like that. So I do think he'll get a few more touches than he did last year, but I'm going to take the under on 250.
Reed, what do you think? I mean, after Adrian Peterson was traded, he was averaging about 9 carries per game.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I want to go over here, and I understand what Jeff is saying. You don't want to overuse Kamara too in the first 4 games when Ingram is out. You saw the report coming out that Williams and Boston Scott is someone that I really like for you dynasty guys out there that could go, in your dynasty drafts. But if you look at Kamara, yeah, I mean, you're projecting him for about 15 carries per game, and where he had the most last season was 12. And so you have to push the needle a little bit with him. But where you see him potentially getting total touches is obviously in the pass game. If in those games he got 6 receptions on average, you could see those bump up a little bit because, I mean, Cam Meredith and some of these other guys in the receiving core don't really move the needle for me. So I do project to go over here. I do think that he will get bumped up to about 13 or 14 carries. You could potentially see him getting 15 per game in those first 4. And where I really like him is obviously in the pass game. And so I'm going to say over here and be optimistic on Kamara.
I just don't know how many more receptions he can get because 80 is a lot. But, yeah, good. We'll see.
Good stuff, Jeff. Nice rebuttal. Reed, Dalvin Cook, the Vikings running back, over or under 250 rush attempts. Remember, this guy's bouncing back from an ACL injury.
Yeah, this one's tough. I'm gonna say over, but I wouldn't be surprised. Again, there are a few scenarios run out because you have Latavius Murray in that backfield. Early reports, now this is just preseason chatter, early reports are saying that, yes, they are going to split time. How much? It's probably going to be an 80-20 or 75-25 split between Cook and Murray. But you could see them slowly bringing Cook back just to make sure that the ACL is still intact. Obviously, it's not going to be ripping off his knee. It's going to be there, but you might see them slowly going into it. Are they going to be, so far ahead? The first 4 games, you have San Francisco, Green Bay, Buffalo, and some easier teams. So are they going to be out of it? Do you just put Murray in there? I'm going to say over because you saw him average in those first 4 games about 20 carries or 18 to 20 carries. And that puts him in that puts him in that range in terms of 250 carries. And so I'm going to say over, but the scenarios of Murray potentially eating into those is a little scary. So I'm going to say over, but just by a bit.
Jeff, how concerned are you with Murray kind of chewing away at Cook's workload here? Balanced offense with Cousins under center. He's going to be involved in that passing game too.
I'm more worried than I think most people are. I mean, look, again, you can look at last year, and look, Dalvin Cook was on pace for a huge year. He would have hit like 290 carries if you average out his first 4 games. But you also have to take into the consideration, Latavius Murray was just coming on to the Vikings last year, and he was coming off an ankle injury. He wasn't integrated into the offense. He took 216 carries in this offense last year, Latavius Murray did. He is integrated. The Mike Zimmer trusts him. And as far as people citing the fact he fumbled in 2 preseason games, he fumbled once in the regular season last year. I think he's got the trust of the coaches. And I think it's more a case of the coaches are going to want to bring Dalvin Cook along slowly. This is their lead back, but he's young and he's coming off an ACL injury. Why thrust them into 25 carries a game? I think he goes under 250 carries. I think as the season goes on, his workload probably picks up. But if I had to pick one side of this, I definitely go under 250.
All right, Jeff, how about Panthers running back Christian McCaffrey? 350 touches. Is he going over or under that? Now, keep in mind, the Panthers coaching staff is saying that they want to get him 25 to 30 touches a game. So 350 would be an average of 22 per.
I am drinking the Kool-Aid on Christian McCaffrey. I am in. Look, at the start of this year, I was, they signed CJ Anderson and, he's not going to get as many touches. Then the coach comes out and says they just want to feed him 25 to 30 times a game. But then in preseason, they actually do it. I mean, they touched the ball in like 10 of their first 15 plays in preseason. CJ Anderson was in Siberia. He's nowhere to be found. The other thing about Christian McCaffrey is I think people really sleep on how talented he is. He is an every down running back. He's got Le'Veon Bell receiving skills. So I am all in on this. I've bumped him up in front of Alvin Kamara for me personally. I don't think it's outlandish to take him 5th overall in a PPR league. Christian McCaffrey, I'm over on this. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to be a huge volume play this year.
Well, in that preseason game against the Dolphins, once he had that 71-yard touchdown,
that was insane, dude.
Pretty much, I think a lot of people are drinking the Kool-Aid. Reed, what about you? Are you going to down some Kool-Aid?
I will say yes, I am. I'm in the CMCA. He's amazing. He's an amazing talent, and I do think that there is an argument to take him over Kamara, like Jeff was saying. But 350 is crazy. Like, want to and reality are two very different things. Like, I want to burn the shirt that I was wearing in the last segment yesterday, but reality, it's Emerson's shirt, so I can't burn it. Right? I can't burn it. So when you look at Christian McCaffrey, realistically, and Jeff just mentioned this. Jeff just mentioned last segment or the last question, that where are these going to come from? If it's going to come in terms of 22 total touches, that means last year when you look at average catches, he had 5. If you bump that up to 6 or 7, that means his carries have to bump up to 16 or 17 per game. And if we think that Christian McCaffrey can sustain 16 to 17 carries per game, why'd they bring in CJ Anderson? And to me, at 350, I have him closer to 300 or 275. And that still puts them in that RB1 consideration better than Kamara. So for me, at 350 is too much. Want to is different than actual reality. So no.
Well, we'll see.
Why do you hate Kool-Aid, Reed?
We'll see.
What's your deal with
too much sugar?
Bro?
Too much sugar, Jeff.
Yeah.
I see what you eat around
We're
the
gonna
DraftKings
see.
offices.
We're gonna see what we can do also about making that shirt thing a reality. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just gotta get the wardrobe memos. I guess I keep on missing that invitation.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta stay on top of it, buddy. But thanks, guys. We appreciate everything that you do for us and everyone at home.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got our baseball trio back in a couple minutes, but before Steve puts up his Bukes, Brendan Glasheen has a little update on Giancarlo Stanton coming back for round 2 tonight in Miami.
We took a ride down Narrative Street Tuesday night with Giancarlo Stanton's return to Miami. A lot of you went in on the slugger, 14% owned in classic contests, and he didn't pan out all that well. He went 2 for 6 with a double, logging 8 DK points in the Yankees' 2-1 extra inning win over the Fish. Let's look ahead to tonight. Stanton's up $400, 5,300, facing righty Trevor Richards, who was just god-awful last time out against the Braves. 10 hits allowed, including 2 homers in 4 1/3 innings pitched. The long ball has lingered as of late for Richards. He's let up 5 over his last 10 starts, 9 bombs allowed overall, and 90 or so innings of work. Unlike Tuesday's starter Pablo Lopez, Richards clearly not home run proof. And say what you want about Marlins Park and its unfriendly confines for mashers. This is Giancarlo Stanton we're talking about here, people. Take a flyer on him to crush a towering blast into the seats.
The baseball trio is back, and if the boys want to fight tonight, you better let them. Gary and Steve and Julian are here.
And it is Steve's shining moment. Mark it 2 straight days, Donnie, now that his internet is working. It's still the self-proclaimed highest rated segment on our show. Time for Put Up Your Bukes. For those of you at home who might not know what exactly we're talking about, you're not alone. Steve is going to make 3 picks for tonight along with DK point projections here, and Julian and Garion will then fight him on it. It's a play on words, put up your bukes.
We get it,
Steve, your first pick, please.
Yes, in the segment that's loved by many and hated by none. Jesse didn't get to do it today, so I'll do it. That's fine.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm gonna start here with Lance Lynn for 26 DK fantasy points. Look, the downfall for Lynn has been facing left-handed bats. Have you guys seen this Marlins lineup tonight? The only lefties in this lineup is Rafael Ortega leading off, Derek Dietrich batting cleanup, and Magneuris Sierra batting 8th. All these guys combined have a 133 ISO and a 308 WOBA against righties with a 24K percentage. There's literally nothing to worry about in this spot for Lynn. Did you guys see that game last night? They had the bases loaded like 3 times in that game, and they still couldn't get a run across. All those times, they had no outs. This Marlins team stinks. They cannot hit at all against righties, which this lineup is full of. Lynn has a 298 WOBA with a 3.29 FIP. Lynn is a no-brainer tonight.
Julian, how can you argue that?
Yeah, look, the Marlins do stink, and let me say this. I really do like Lance Lynn as a play tonight, but I will fight Steve on this on the 26 DraftKings points. Masahiro Tanaka pitched last night in that game that went 1-1 in extra innings. He only wound up with 16 DraftKings points. this number, 26 DK points, Lynn has only accomplished that once this season, albeit it was earlier this month with 36 DK points against the White Sox. But one time in all of his starts, he doesn't quite have that much upside to accomplish this number, although he's an extremely safe play against an extremely bad lineup. Look, I'm going to be playing some Lance Lynn tonight, but in 10 of his starts this season, he's scored between 16 and 25 DK points. I think he's safer to project in that window than projecting 26 plus.
All right, well, you're essentially agreeing with Steve if you're going to have Lance Lynn in your lineup.
But I disagree that he will score 26 DraftKings points, so I put up my bukes.
There
Okay.
we
It's
go.
like Jason
Good,
Hayward
nice.
did great last night.
Garion,
We
what do
all
you?
miss sometimes, Steve.
All right, you two, we're going to take this off the air later. Garion, what are you thinking here? 26 DK fantasy points for Lance Lynn?
I mean, I've already said that I've had a lot of lineups that have Lance Lynn in it, so it's going to be hard for me to argue this point necessarily, but I do side more on Julian's end of this in terms of the projections. I mean, especially with how walk-prone Lance Lynn can be from time to time. I mean, this is not someone you can pencil in for 7 innings and feel comfortable about it. I think he's more of a 5 and change, 6-inning guy, and that does cap your upside. I mean, hopefully the Yankees can score more runs than they did last night off of Trevor Richards. That would get him the extra 4 points and could maybe vault him up to 26. But I'm really looking at this more as a floor play. I want at least 22, 23 points for my SP2 tonight, and I think Lance Lynn can do that against the Marlins team that, as Steve said, doesn't bring a high quality of left-handed bat to the table, and across the last 30 days have the worst WOBA and WRC plus in all of baseball. And that's actually a feat because the Giants are also freaking terrible. So to be worse than the Giants the last 30 days is definitely something you have to point out.
Steve, your second player for this segment, you also have projected in the 20s. Who is it?
Yeah, Jacob Junis for 24 DK fantasy points. I mean, he's pitched exceptionally well as of late, especially in the month of August. 297 WOBA with a 2.88 FIP and a K9 of 10.6. Look at the Rays over the last 2 weeks, 297 WOBA with a 134 ISO and a 22K percentage. I mean, he's only $7,200 pitching in Tropicana Park tonight, Tropicana Field. Pairing him with Lynn, if you really want to go crazy, but it's not because they're great picks, that leaves you with an average of 4,300 per hitter tonight. Give me all of that. You can absolutely load up on bats tonight. I think he's going to go totally overlooked tonight just because of his poor play for the majority of the season. But I'm going to ride the hot hand here at a cheap salary. Why not go with Junis?
You overlooking this guy, Garion?
I guess I'm overlooking Jacob Junis. I mean, the problem here, we talk about how Lynn brings an elevated floor to the table, and that's, we really always have to dissect floor versus ceiling. I don't know what the ceiling is with Junis. I mean, sure, as Steve said, he's pitched the best baseball of his career, probably the last 6 starts he's made. He's only allowing 0.6 home runs per 9, which for him, considering at one point it was up over 2 in mid-May, in late June even, that's an accomplishment. The problem here is, despite that amazing 6-start run, at least in the perception of Jacob Junis, he's only averaging 15.05 DK fantasy points because the Royals can't win a game. And for as much as we want to make fun of the Rays, I've seen them as high as minus 200 favorites at home tonight. I can't project Junis to win this game. And if he's not going to even get the 4 points for the win, what are we talking about here? 13 points for 5 quality innings? This is Marco Estrada all over again. These just aren't guys who can actually score 20 DK fantasy points.
All right, Steve dropping the eye roll on you. Julian, what are the chances you got Junis paired up with Lynn tonight in your lineup?
Junis will not be in any of my lineups. I would much rather pay $800 more to get Lance Lynn. Look, it's not a terrible pick, but it's just too high of a projection, like Garion said, at 24 points. So I'll take the lower here. Junis pitches on average around 5.5 innings per start and strikes out less than 1 batter per inning. So if he's not the favorite tonight, and that's the type of upside that we're getting with his type of starts, I just don't know how we're getting to the number 24, like Garion said. And we went through the numbers with Lynn. With Junis, he's only surpassed that number twice this season, although he's flirted with it a couple of other times, but that was during that hot streak that Garion touched on. Again, I don't hate the play, but you've got Lance Lynn not that much higher at 8,000. We've got a guy at 7,800 that I'm going to touch on. in the Hidden Jewels segment later in the show. I just don't see why you have to spend $7,200 on Jake Junis.
All right, Steve, my apologies. We've got to cut this segment short here, but don't worry. It sounds like you'll be able to tee it up against Jules here shortly.
Yeah, we're going to
don't worry.
Yeah, we know you're ready. You're ready.
I actually liked Steve's third pick, so if that makes you feel better.
Bummer.
Sorry, guys. We can't talk about it.
Yeah, we can't. So we're going to give you guys a little break here before bringing you back to get Julian's value plays for the night. But before we get to that, here's Pat Mayo giving you the 411 on some value plays for the PGA Northern Trust this weekend.
I did kind of gloss over Emiliano Grillo, who is another sort of fairways, irons, pretty decent putter too, especially on bent. Do you have any interest in him at 7,000?
Kind of, and his ownership won't be much either. It'll be under 5%. So yes, I kind of do. He's let me down a few times this year where I've really liked him on particular courses. But yeah, I will have some shares.
So the ownership that I'm looking at from this range right now, at least projected by Fantasy National, Keegan I have above 10%. Probably won't end up being there, but people who are using the system see him rate out really well, so they're plugging them into lineup. CT Pan, Chris Kirk, who you mentioned at 10%, and the big one. Can we play Joel Dahman? Like, is this field too big for Joel Dahman? Because he rates out exceptionally well.
I think he's going to have some owners too, because people see the record, they see his rolling stats, but you have to keep in mind that those rolling stats are not comparative to the other guys in this field. He didn't play at WGC, didn't play PGA Championship, hasn't played the majors, so you're taking his stats and his results from John Deere, Barracuda, Barbasol, Greenbrier, things like that. So you're kind of not comparing apples to apples there. And if he's going to be heavily owned, I can easily fade him. He has been playing well. There's no doubt about that. And he could compete. I just think it's a decent fade if he's going to be 10% owned down in this range.
Yeah, so his past 4 events, his past 5 events, he has 5 top 25s, he has 3 top 10s, 4 top 15s. 8th at the Canadian Open, 15th at Barbasol, 2nd at John Deere, 5th at Greenbrier, 23rd at Quicken Loans. And he's been like lights out ball striking in every single one of those events. But like you mentioned, that's compared to the field of that week. I think that if he cracks double digits, I'm going to have to bite the bullet and just fade. I'll play Andrew Landry instead, or Austin Cook, or someone like that.
Yep.
Do you have favorites from down here? Like besides, do you like Landry or Cook? Because I kind of do. But other than that, McGirt's playing a little bit better.
Yeah, I liked McGirt last week. He's been playing okay, although he's playing through an injury. He's going to have surgery in the offseason. We know that. People have been concerned about that. But he's been playing through it, and he's been playing well. I do like Cook a little bit in this range. People are going to look toward the names like a Brendan Steele, who's just been playing just terrible, having a bad second half of this season now. I would probably go with Bo Hostler. I would own some shares there, but I don't like a ton of guys below that 6,700, 6,600 range. I would probably do Hostler and Cook, and I could see Landry as well.
I guess the only last guy to talk about, it's tough to talk about these guys in context of them winning because they're not going to win. So right. Can they come inside the top 20? Can they sneak at a top 10? What about Putnam?
Yeah, he's been playing. He's got the best form of anyone in this range. He's been playing really well. Will it translate to this field? We'll see. And that's the thing. If you're playing a lot of teams in that $5 GPP on DraftKings, you're going to have all of your guys in the top 20 for sure, if not the top 15. So you have to be careful not to pick out too many guys in this low 6K range, because the chances of few of them all placing in the top 15 is very, very small. There certainly will be a couple guys in the top 20 down here. But the more you include in your core, the more you include on your rosters, the lower probability it is to happen. But Andrew Putnam, I can see owning. He's one of the few guys in this low range that I could own.
I'm with you on Hostler. I really like Hostler. I like Putnam as well. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be in on Kevin Chappell. I might take a few scatter shots on, like I said, the Cooks, the Landrys, guys that I just kind of correlate as similar type players of ones I really want to focus on. I guess the last one would be Ryan Armour, potentially Sam Ryder. But I did want to go back to Putnam for a second. Last 3 starts, 8th at the Canadian Open. He won the Barracuda, I want to say it was. And then he was 59th at the PGA Championship. But I feel like that's misleading. If you actually look at his numbers from the PGA Championship, he gained off the tee, gained around the greens, gained on approach, and lost 5 strokes putting. That's atypical for him.
Yeah, those are great stats. I like that a lot. That's very encouraging for him. So yeah, I will definitely own it, and he'll be owned at a handful of shares, or a handful of percentage in the field. So you could easily be overweight at 8%.
I know that I know that we don't really look at putting all that much, but I think it's more influential this week than maybe any other this season.
I can see that. Yeah.
Final day to lock in those lineups ahead of tomorrow's Northern Trust Open, the start of the FedEx Cup playoffs. So there's no better time than now to have a super serious conversation with David Barnett of Tour Junkies and Len Hochberg, senior golf writer at RotoWire.
So we're going to begin, guys, with PGA price check. So you're going to convince us why or why not these golfers will bring value to their salaries. So Jon Rahm, $9,500. How are you feeling about this one, David?
All right, so I'm kind of a Jon Rahm homer, and we have some inside information that Jon had a little talking to the Saturday after the PGA Championship. Somebody on his team finally got real with Jon and talked to him a little bit about his temper and his on-course behavior. Before you know it, he goes out Sunday, has a good day. I think that if he can fix things in between, tee shots and in between his ears, I think Jon Rahm can really threaten the number one spot in the world. Despite being so young, his talent is incredible. And I think Ridgewood, contrary to some of the stuff I'm reading, I think it plays to a bomber. So, at his price, I don't think he's going to be too high owned. He hasn't been over 15% since the U.S. Open. He putts better on POA surfaces, and he's gained 6 strokes tee to green in the last 5 tournaments, coming off a fourth-place finish at the PGA. I'll be all over Jon Rahm.
David, we love the insider info. We're all about that.
We must have you on again.
Yes, absolutely. Len, What about you? How do you feel about Rahm? He's going to cost you $9,500.
Yeah, at $9,500, he's the number 7 guy on the board. I think that's a little high for him this week. I actually like him a lot more next week, but not to get ahead of ourselves. I think with this course, even though we just learned that he had a talking to about his temper and all, Ridgewood has a lot of dog legs, has some very tiny greens. There could be some frustration setting in with a few missed shots. He may not show it outwardly, but I think it's a tough course for him to hold his emotions in check. And with the small greens, scrambling will really play a big part in how the golfers do this week. Jon Rahm, middle of the road, scrambling, 78th in scrambling on the tour this year. He had a great week last week, 2 weeks ago at the PGA, tied for 4th. The week before, T17 at the Bridgestone. I would think more T17 than T4 for Jon Rahm this week.
I'd be absolutely shocked that this guy could stay cool, calm, and collected.
Yeah, Len, not sold on the attitude change
for
Jon Rahm.
No, not at all. But Len, for a cool $89,000, you can have yourself a man coming off a 3rd-place finish at the PGA Championship who goes by the name of Adam Scott. So would you do it?
Adam Scott, he's the number 13 guy on the board, and boy, he was great last week. It was actually kind of nice to see for a very likable golfer who's fallen way back of late. So it was very nice to see that he did, push Koepka to the very end, end up 3rd place at the PGA. I think that's a little bit much to ask for this week. His scrambling is way back. He is outside the top 140 in scrambling. I think 8,900, while I think it's an accurate price based on what's happened, it's not something I would touch or go anywhere near. A top 25 would be fantastic for Adam Scott this week. If he missed the cut, if you told me he missed the cut, I wouldn't be surprised at that either.
Yep, $8,900, not $89,000.
I was going to say, wow.
Nobody has that much money.
Very expensive.
So, David, with Adam Scott, $8,900 here, but his weekend at the PGA was kind of a rare flash this season. So, what would you do with him?
Well, at $8,900, he is a man dime. I might consider paying $89,000 for him, but I'm not going to pay for the golf ability this week on Ridgewood. I agree with Len here. I'm just not buying it. Out of about 16 events since January, Adam Scott's only gained strokes with the putter 3 times out of those 16 events. We saw it this past finish at the PGA, but he hasn't really strung 2 together all year. The putter's the problem. He's a ball striking guy, but I do agree scrambling's something to think about. I think Ridgewood is going to be a test of golf from tee to green without doubt. So I'm out on Adam Scott. I'm not going to pull the trigger at $8,900. Agree with Lynn here.
All right, guys. Well, just south of 8,000 is Rafa Cabrera Bello, finishing top 11 in his past 2 events. What kind of value do you think he's going to bring, David?
I don't mind Rafa. I'm not super high on him, but I'm not necessarily looking to fade him. We'll see if he makes my player pool tonight. He does play better on tough tracks. I think you see that historically, not just this season, but in seasons past. Rafa likes the tough tracks. He's gained over 4 strokes tee to green in his last 5 and last 10 tournaments, with an 11th place, 10th place, and 17th place finish in his last 3 events. So, the price tag of $7,900 isn't bad for Rafa, but I just don't know that he's going to make a lot of my lineups. And we'll see how chalky he is. He was 24% on average in DraftKings for the Wyndham, and obviously he played pretty well. So, I could see Rafa's ownership being in that 15 to 20 range, and I don't know that I love him that much. We'll see.
Yeah, Len, he was 11th at the Wyndham, actually. So how do you feel about this guy?
Well, he's had top 20s his last 3 starts, 2 of them big tournaments, the Bridgestone and the PGA, and he had a pretty quiet spring. So he's turning it on at just the right time, and $7,900. Anytime you can get somebody that cheaply who's playing well and roughly top 25 in the world, I think that's a great price for him. And again, I certainly favor him over Scott, who's $1,000 more. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him finish against higher than his countryman, John Rahm, who is $1,600 more. Rahm, Cabrera Bello, not the greatest scrambler, but he's been really good with his strokes gained approach the last 3 weeks. That's also important this week. I think he's a good price. He's a good play at that price.
All right, Len and David, you two were so fantastic. We'd love to have you back here in about 12 minutes or so. So please hang tight for us. We are going to turn the page now to week 1 in the NFL. Adam Levitan and the boys at DFS Edge are helping you with roster construction.
All right, hello and welcome back to another special mini edition of the Daily Fantasy Edge. My name is Adam Levitan. Of course, I'm the father of Jerry. I'm one of the analysts here at DraftKings. I am joined by Al Seidenfeld, a.k.a. Al Smizzle. I am joined by Peter Jennings, a.k.a. CSU Ram 88. I do think that there are some kind of clear roster construction things coming into focus even at this early date. I want to talk a little bit about that. Al, what have you seen in terms of week 1 roster construction? Where do you think you'll be spending early in your week 1 cash lineup?
I think that there's enough value at running back that I'm going to want to have one of the stud running backs for the week. But even some of the stud running backs are priced down a little bit. You don't have to go all the way up to Le'Veon Bell to get a workhorse that's going to get 20-plus touches and a lot of the goal line at home. But there's a ton of value at that position as well. Guys like Rob Kelly, Burkhead, and other values that have popped up, as well as some guys in the $5,500 to $6,500 range, Alex Collins, and Dalvin Cook, and a couple of other players in that range. So I think I'm spending up at wide receiver, going for a couple of guys in the 7,000 plus range that I really want to target. That's kind of how my roster builds have gone so far.
Peter, there is, I think in the mid-range of running back, like Melvin Gordon is getting incredible usage. It's a home game against Kansas City. Leonard Fournette is getting incredible preseason usage on the road, but at the Giants, sometimes we often talk on this podcast about jamming them in, referring to David Johnson, referring to Le'Veon Bell, referring to guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley. I'm feeling like Melvin and Fournette in kind of equally as good plays in a vacuum. How do you feel about that kind of mid-range of running back?
I do love the mid-tier value at running back, Gordon and Fournette, who I think are going to be studs and clear running back ones that you can get in at a reasonable price tag. But we'll see. Week 3 of the preseason is very important. We'll see if any other injuries come out. Geis has been the big one so far, but I think that's the real factor that we'll have to watch for before week 1.
All right, we told you we'd be back to baseball, and we're not lying. Gary and Steve and Steve's nephew, Julian, joining us once again.
All right, Julian, Steve gave you a hard time last night about this segment. Some hurtful phrases used include some jewels should stay hidden, and this segment should be called Hidden Glass. So without further ado, it's time for Hidden Jewels. Julian, hit us with your value plays on tonight's slate. Then we'll open it up to Gary and Steve for their hurtful thoughts. Your first jewel.
Yeah, well, guess what? It's my segment, so I will not keep anything hidden from you guys. And guess what? I'm going right back to a pitcher at Coors Field. John Gray, at $7,800. I have a feeling this one's going to go over a little bit better than yesterday when Steve bashed Tyler Anderson, who wound up okay with 16 DraftKings points. But I like Gray a lot more. What was wrong with that play? 16 DraftKings points. But I like Gray a lot more today against the Padres. They strike out all the time versus right-handed pitching, and Gray is a strikeout pitcher. I'll say it again. At Coors Field, you're going to have to make contact with the ball if you're going to be hitting it out of the park, and that's something that Gray doesn't allow much. He has a $900 drop in salary since his last start, and, the last time he faced the Padres, that would be 37 DraftKings points. John Gray, my favorite pitching value on this slate.
Steve, that's a lot of DraftKings points. What do you think about John Gray?
Yeah, so it's not going to be called Hidden Glass today. It's going to be called the MLB Cheat Sheet Reading by Julian. What a coward. He picked up people that I liked in my article today so I wouldn't bash them. Make grow a set, okay? Sure, John Gray, yeah, I like him. He's pretty good. 42 in the third inning since being recalled. 243 WOBA with a 3.44 FIP with a K9 of 8.1. Half of those innings have been at Coors Field. 245 WOBA with a 3.11 FIP. I mean, the Padres against lefties, yeah, that's a legitimate offense that I don't usually want to target against, but against righties, yeah, they don't really do too much. So I like Gray, but of course I like Gray because I said it in the article. I can't wait for the next one, and let's see who that one is.
Okay, Garion, how about you? Do you like John Gray?
Yeah, I guess I'll play good cop here to Steve's bad cop. Yeah, I also like John Gray. I also wrote about John Gray. You know what? A lot of people like John Gray tonight. It's a pretty good spot to attack. Sure, the game's in Coors. That might scare off a couple of people, but I don't know what this guy has to do to get his salary back up above like 9,000. I know he burned a lot of bridges in the first half of the season, but he's been phenomenal his last 6 starts. Even since the All-Star break, a .86 whip. This guy's been great. Half those starts have been at Coors. The other ones haven't been that easy either. He's had to go into Miller Park. He's had to go to Busch Stadium. Like, these are not cupcake games he's had to have in the last month and a half or so. So, yeah, I like John Gray a lot tonight. If Tyler Anderson showed us anything, it's that the Padres are back to their strikeout ways, and I think Gray could definitely have a huge impact tonight.
Okay, so it sounds like that first jewel was an actual jewel, Julian.
Coward.
So, great job.
Coward.
Julian, how about your next jewel?
Well, hopefully this one is hidden enough for Steve, because if I pick guys in his article, I'm going to hear it for that. If I pick guys that aren't on his radar that are too hidden, I'm going to hear it for that. But I'm going with Juan Soto at $4,100. As Steve said on the show yesterday, he thinks people might target against the Nationals less now that Daniel Murphy and Matt Adams are traded. So by Steve's definition, Juan Soto, a bat for the Nationals, should be a hidden jewel. He's slumping a little bit over the last week. It's been a little over a week since he managed his last home run, but he's still been putting up a few DK points in each game. His salary has dropped $900 over the last week. He enters an opposite-hand matchup against Zach Eflin of the Phillies, who has been horrible lately against left-handed bats. Eflin has an ERA of over 5 in the last month, giving up a home run every 4 innings. Love this spot for Juan Soto.
Okay, Steve, was this one hidden enough for you?
Hey, Emerson, can you tell me who my top value play on tonight's slate was?
Yeah, absolutely. Give me 1 second here.
I'll give you a spoiler alert.
Yeah.
It was
I didn't have it ready.
Juan Soto, yeah.
Juan Soto.
Obviously, I missed the cheat sheet today.
hidden jewel. Yeah, all you had to do was read my article, and you don't even have to watch this segment.
Are you sure Julian doesn't ghostwrite your cheat sheet?
Yeah,
Ooh,
that's
wow.
it.
Thickens.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, he picked Jason Hayward yesterday. And
so then why – okay, back up. I don't want to hear it. Why would you say the Nationals should be targeted against from a pitching standpoint, and then the next day put a National as your value of the slate?
Oh, shoot.
I said that could be a play that people could start implementing. Doesn't mean on every single night. Let's get to Juan Soto. There's time here. They have a time restraint here. Juan Soto, great matchup against Eflin. Against lefties, Eflin's allowing 340 WOBA with a 4.66 FIP, 8 of his 13 home runs around. Soto is dropped down so dramatically at 4,200. How could you not play him tonight? I mean, he's one of the best.
4,100.
4,100.
This guy. You know what? Give it a Garion. He read my cheat sheet. We all read my cheat sheet. Go ahead, Garion.
All right, Garion, take it away.
Yeah, we don't even have to talk about Juan Soto. Let's just talk about the elements surrounding this game right now. I mean, Zach Eflin, as these guys have talked about, since the beginning of July, 3 full home runs per 9 to left-handed bats. This is nothing new either. I mean, the Zach Eflin we saw in March and April and May, that guy was the outlier. Eflin has struggled with left-handed bats since he came into Major League Baseball. So I think we're back at it here. Nationals Park is the best home run hitting park for left-handed bats in the National League, according to Baseball Prospectus. I like this spot so much, not even particular Nationals. I'm in on like Matt Wieters at 3-1 tonight. Like, get any left-handed bat you can into this lineup tonight against Zach Eflin.
Everybody nodded, something everybody can agree on.
I can confirm Juan Soto saved big by drafting Juan Soto.
Literally 5 hours later. Thank you, Emerson, for that useless piece of information. Unfortunately, Julian, we're going to have to kill your third jewel because of the aforementioned time restraint so we can get to Slate Approved.
Yep, that's a fact. So give us your Slate Approved picks, please. Your lock of the night. The player you're rostering no matter what. Steve, who are you going with?
I'm going to go with Lance Lynn. Love that spot from tonight.
Sounds like all you guys like Lance Lynn. Julian?
I do like Lance Lynn. I like John Gray, but I'll build off this lefty Nationals and say Juan Soto and Bryce Harper.
Okay, again, just following in Steve's footsteps. I respect that. Gary.
Bryce Harper. He didn't say that name.
Emerson's just trying to get to you.
I'm just
Ignore
teasing
him.
you, buddy. You know I
Ignore
like
him.
you. We have a
Yeah.
great relationship on Twitter. Garion?
Well, we never actually got a chance to talk about him. We were with Julian's last jewel there, but Carlos Carrasco is someone we haven't brought up. I love him as a GPP play tonight. In Boston, his struggles are with lefties. Lefties suck at Fenway Park, and he has been amazing on the road this season. Love Carrasco under $10,000.
And we love those Slate Approved picks. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, we've still got some golf knowledge to drop on you, but first, football. If you're wondering what's going on in Miami with the running back situation, boy, do we have a treat for you. Let's hear from Brendan Glasheen on the Dolphins' RB depth chart.
Did you know the Dolphins lead the NFL in yards per rush average at 5.2 this preseason? Nah, who cares about preseason stats, Brendan? Okay, well, here's something you should care about. The Fins may start Frank Gore, yes, I said it, Frank Gore at running back, and give Kenyon Drake a lot of carries as the backup. This bit of news according to Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. Salguero did say this game plan could flip-flop, his point being both players will play a lot and factor in. This report should concern you a little bit about Drake's usage. He's $5,900 for week 1. That salary ranks 13th among running backs. A lot to cough up, may I add, for a player that might not even start. Maybe the Dolphins are floating this idea to push Drake in these final few weeks of the preseason. Nothing against Frank Gore. He's historically a terrific running back, but come on. The 24-year-old Drake shouldn't be getting pushed around by a 35-year-old who is well past his prime. Eyes on Drake and Gore leading up to Fins Titans in Miami week 1.
One more go around with the golf squad. David Barnett from Tour Junkies, RotoWire's Len Hochberg. This is a segment we like to call Pin Placement, but a former champion edition.
So, predict the finishing position for these former champions at the Northern Trust. We're going to start with two-time winner and reigning champ Dustin Johnson. You're up first, Len.
Well, since Dustin Johnson has finished top 3 in almost half the tournaments he's played in this year, he's been 3 wins, 2 runners-up, 2/3 in his 16 starts. I'm going to think he's going to have a pretty high finish. I don't think he'll win this week. He did tie for 9th when he played this tournament once before, back in 2010. He played the tournament at Ridgewood once before. He missed it in 2014 during his self-imposed sabbatical, or whatever you want to call that. But because he is just so good and he hits the ball so far, and yet he's top 20 in scrambling and in strokes gained putting, seems a bit unfair. I don't think he'll win, but I think we could see DJ finish in the top 5.
DJ, he's the reigning champ. David, where are you going with?
Yeah, a lot of agreement here with Lynn. I'll make this kind of quick. I think DJ's a top 5 finisher as well. I don't really see him winning just yet, but I am targeting the Bombers, as I mentioned before. So I like DJ here. We also know that Ridgewood got some rain last night. We heard today that the course is soft, which obviously sets up even more so for the Bombers. You know, DJ can drive the ball wherever he wants. So I think it makes sense. I think a top 5 finish for DJ is very reasonable.
Well, David, here's a name we haven't spit off in quite some time. Nick Watney winning this event in 2012, his last PGA Tour victory, actually. So where is he going to finish, man?
Yeah, I love some Nick Watney, man, but I'm not digging him this week. You see Watney do a lot of damage earlier in the year. He's a West Coast kind of guy. I see a miscut here, even though you've got, a higher percentage of players out of the 120-man field making the cut. I see Watney missing the cut. I don't feel great about Nick Watney.
Len, what about you? You see him making the cut and $6,400, pay up for it, makes the cut. Pretty good value.
If he makes the cut, yeah, excellent value. But I have to agree with David. I do not see Nick Watney making the cut this year. He's played this tournament at Ridgewood 3 times before. He did make the cut twice, but the last go round in 2014, he missed it. Obviously, Nick Watney's best days are far behind him. He is outside the top 150 in scrambling and strokes gained around the green. And I am really targeting that this week with the very small greens. Nick Watney will not be around on Saturday.
Len, what about Matt Kuchar? What do you think? Where is he going to finish?
Well, Matt Kuchar won the tournament at Ridgewood back in 2010, and then he had another good top 5 finish in 2014. Now, the other side of the coin is Kuchar is not playing well right now. He's missed 3 cuts in his past 5 tournaments. You probably have to go back 5, maybe more years than that to find the last time Kuchar did that. Couldn't have happened at the worst time as he's trying to make perhaps his final Ryder Cup team. But Kuchar has always talked about loving these courses, dog legs, chess match, where you really have to think about your shots instead of just bombing. I think he'll be really invigorated this week. I could see, Kuchar with the top 25, maybe even a little bit better than that.
David, he won it in 2010. Where do you see him finishing?
Yeah, Len's right. He's a completely different player. I mean, this season as he was last season and seasons prior. I mean, Kuchar's always been known as backdoor top 10 Kuchar, right? He's always finding a way to make it happen, and he just hasn't done that this year. But the Ryder Cup narrative is something to think about. I mean, these guys want to be on that team. Kuchar is in jeopardy of being passed up for this, and that's coming. That's right around the corner. So I think that could play a factor, but I'm going to say a top 40. I think like T40, T45 is kind of a place where I see Kuchar finishing. I'm not real high on him.
Hey, David, what about Patrick Reed, another guy who's obviously won this tournament before? Where do you see him finishing on the leaderboard?
I think Reed's kind of sneaky this week, and especially I would venture to guess Len likes him with the scrambling ability, the short game ability, loves to work the ball. I think he's a little sneaky this week. I could see Reed. I'm going to peg like a T12. That's where I think Patrick Reed's going to end up this week.
Len, any reason to believe he could finish higher than T12?
Well, he certainly could finish higher than that. I mean, he's a world-class player. I'm in the range with David. I was going to say top 15, somewhere in there. And I do like Reed because of scrambling. But the thing I really like about Reed is that he finally took a week off last week. He has played 5 weeks in a row. He's playing in Hamburg. He's playing in different countries, different continents. The guy plays so much. He plays too much, and that hurts him as much as anything. So he's well-rested. Or semi-rested for him anyway, and he tied for 9th when he played at Ridgewood back in 2014. So I'm kind of high on Reed. I could see a top 15, and David's top 12 not out of the question by any means.
All right, well, before you guys take off, we need your slate-approved picks. This is your lock of the tournament. David, who are you going with?
All right, I'm going to throw in a bonus one. I think the easy pick is Brooks. I love Brooks Koepka this week, but here's what I'm going to do. I think Xander Schauffele is my lock of the week. Right now, a lot of websites I'm looking at have him projected around 13%. Here's why I love Schauffele. He is a big game hunter. This kid is super talented. You see him play really well in majors, WGCs, the Players' Championship, and I think the FedEx Cup playoffs. We saw last year. He won the Tour Championship at Eastlake with the 30 best golfers, arguably in the world at that time. He loves the big stage. He loves the big spots. He's a bomber. He's a scorer. And he's a value on DraftKings, if you ask me. Paul Casey, Tyrrell Hatton, Bubba Watson, and Alex Noren all priced above him. Yet, on average, if you look at Vegas odds, and a lot of books have Xander better odds to win than those guys. So I think Xander presents a little bit of a Vegas value as well. I think Xander's going to be sneaky this week. If he comes in like sub 13, 12% in a lot of GPPs, I'll be really happy. I'll be twice that in ownership.
All right, Len, what about you? Who is your lock of the tournament?
Well, Xander Schauffele is a great pick, and he does, like David says, he plays well in big tournament after big tournament, and he is just a young guy, so watch out for him. I am not picking him this week. I'm going a little bit more chalky. Jason Day. Jason Day, as I keep harping on, these greens are tiny. Even the best guys, greens in regulation, are going to miss greens, and then it becomes a chipping and putting contest, and lo and behold, number one on tour in strokes gained around the green, number one in strokes gained putting. Jason Day is both. And he's played this course well before. He was runner-up to Hunter Mahan, of all people, back in 2014, and he was top 5 when Kuchar won back in 2010. I was a little surprised to see Jason Day as the number 3 guy on the DraftKings board, but I couldn't argue with it. I think that was very smart, and I think he is right where he should be.
Len and David, you both did fantastic. It was great to have some new faces on board because Reed gets a little old after a while. So have a good one. We appreciate you guys. Jessie, did you learn anything today?
I learned that Julian might be ghostwriting Steve's articles on Playbook, so
Yep.
that was good to know.
And I have learned that we are out of time. Have a good one, ladies and gentlemen.